All right. I have to tell you, I'm pretty excited today to have this guest on the People's Podcast. Today, we're going to speak to Peter Kenyon. So, Peter is currently, and I say currently because he's had so many leadership roles, he's the Vice President of Client Services at Entegra Canada and a seasoned, and I mean seasoned, a seasoned executive leader. He has worked in organizations like Pepsi, Cisco, Diageo, Russell Hendricks. He's known for blending commercial sharpness and expertise with genuine, I would say, people leadership. Peter has a great knowledge of how to build high-performing teams across both public and private sectors, and he's able to drive sustainable growth in those companies with operational excellence. So today, Peter, thank you for being on the People's Playbook.
You are more than welcome, Jason. Great to see you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's get right into it, Peter. So I've had the privilege of knowing you for quite a few years now.
Big time.
And, your leadership style always has resonated with me because you are about people, but the big thing is you're also about performance. Okay.
Mhm.
And there is a key differential before you actually say, hey, I'm all about people, but the performance has to be there as well. You're particularly in your world, you're known for driving results and building strong teams. So when performance and morale are both under pressure, which do you stabilize first?
Good question. The performance is a result, in my opinion, of good morale. So for me, I think you can generate some good performance over a short period of time, when there's a challenge. But if you want to have sustainable results with engaged employees, you have to engage the folks. You have to have good morale. I don't know how far you want me to go down that path in terms of building morale, Jason, but to me, when you have people who will run through a wall for you and are engaged in what they do and, are happy to get out of bed every day, it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you mean when you say happy to get out of bed every day? Because that's a key thing leaders actually say in different words in different ways.
Sure. I think when people feel that they're a part of something bigger, when what they do matters to the results in the organization, when employees are recognized for driving, for doing the right thing, for driving good performance, when they achieve a goal that's hard to get to, and, maybe you help them along, maybe you don't, but whatever the case may be, but they get there and there's a celebration at the end of it, that it's easy to get out of bed. You know what I mean? You're motivated to go and work hard.
I agree. Let's talk about that for a second. I actually like to call that better work, better world. And
Nice.
I believe in my deepest of my being that when we actually enjoy what we do, it doesn't feel like work, right? But what am I contributing and what is my why, right? So let's talk about kind of your leadership style. So
Sure.
you've led multiple different sections within companies. And what I mean by that is you've led sales, you've led operations, you've led supply chain.
Yeah.
What leadership mindsets allowed you to earn credibility in all those different functions along the way?
I think my style is a humble style and a lead by example style. I don't have a degree. I think you know that. Many successful people don't. So I feel like if I lead by example, if I listen, if I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the room, because I really don't think that I am, and I truly appreciate the job that people do and care about how they do it, because that's going to inform me, that's going to help me be a better person. So again, that servant leadership style of humility part to what I do, it doesn't mean I don't expect things, doesn't mean that right is right and wrong is wrong. It just means, how I go about it is a bit different, I think.
Yeah. Having the opportunity to have worked with you is, I think one of your superpowers, Peter, is you care.
Yeah.
Right. And I, to your point on degree and all, I never look at that stuff. I look at, does this person care? Because the competition is too tight to have great leaders out there right now.
Mm.
But when somebody cares, that is a absolutely different kind of superpower that you can have. And care is very authentic, right? You could come across as, hey, asking you how your day is while I'm walking by you at 50 miles per hour going to get my coffee and not really listening. I think your superpower that you've actually been able to change culture and organizations quickly is you do care, and it's evident that you care.
If you remember, a spouse's name or the family, or, hey, I know you weren't feeling very well the other, that stuff matters to people.
Of course it does. Of course it does. I think it resonates whatever kind of organization you're in, which is great segue. You've been in both public and private
Mhm.
organizations, right? And there's
Mhm.
a big difference there when you're in a private or a public organization, right? Public tends to be, hey, how were the numbers yesterday? And if they're not better by the next minute, we're in trouble. Private tends to be, hey, we have to grow this because I might want to sell it one day. I might want to go public one day, et cetera, et cetera. What did each of the sectors, both public and private, teach you about accountability and ownership?
Yeah. So I was a private company guy for a long time before I went to the public sector. And there definitely is a difference between the two. I think to be fair to both, they both expect results. I think the big part about it is the timing and how you get there is different, right? To your point, when you're working for a large corporation, publicly traded, right? Like you're measuring it by the day, but certainly by quarter. One bad mistake can really drive the stock price down or whatever the case may be. So it's the pace of play is super intense. In the public sector, again, results matter, but it tends to be less individual, right? I find that in the private sector, you can put your hand up and say, I want to be accountable for this. In the public sector, you generally find the group is a part of this. I find it's more of a hive mentality a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like I'm a big collaborator, but in the public sector, I found, and again, this is my opinion, is I'd rather make this decision that I'm making with 12 other people or 11 other people, whatever the case may be, where I find in the private sector, certainly when you're, either looking to young in your career, looking to grow in the organization, you're maybe willing to take a couple of risks and put your hand up and I don't want to say go it alone, but you tend to find people there that want that, put it on my shoulders. Let me carry it where it's more of a group thing in the public sector. Both are great.
Yeah.
It's just a different pace of play. I was not long, honestly, in public. I enjoyed what I did. People are people. That kind of style stays the same.
Yeah.
But knowing who I am, reading my profile that we've done, I'm not a public guy. I'm a private sector.
Yeah. You said something there in that answer. You said, when I was a young leader, I took more risks. What else did you do as a young leader? So if you look back, it's going to be a two-part question, actually,
Yeah, okay.
Peter. So if you look back at the young Peter Kenyon and you say, hey, I wish I could have told my 25, 26-year-old this piece of advice about leadership and about kind of driving your career. So what would you tell that Peter? And what if you, the second part of this question is, what would you stop doing when you were younger? If you could just say, hey, you know what, Peter, don't stress this right now. You just take this away and don't worry about that. What would you say to that young Peter?
I want to answer the second part first. And this was advice that I got from my boss at the time, and we'll keep companies and names out of it. But as a young leader who was looking to make a name for himself, and I was in a position, I wasn't married at the time, so I worked all the time.
Yeah.
And and I had a lot of people working for me, and my boss came to me one day and said, listen, I appreciate what you're doing, and it's great that you're interested in working, 60 or 70, whatever the number is, hours, and working on weekends and things like that.
Yeah.
But you need to appreciate that unwittingly you're sending a message to your organization about an expectation that maybe isn't realistic for them.
Yeah.
And right, because I'm there working and sending emails on Saturday or whatever, they're thinking, "Oh my God, Pete's working." Like, wow, maybe I should be too. And then that was unbelievably valuable advice for me. I would tell myself that now, and I'm glad somebody told me then. What was the first part of the question about?
First part of the question is, what three leadership traits did you take from young Pete to middle-aged Pete to say, hey, you know what, this has worked out along the way?
Okay, fair enough. So I'd say the first two things are right here, right? I learned along the way, you need to listen twice as much as you're talking, right? Two ears, one mouth. And all of these things, there's going to be nothing new or transformational in what I'm going to be telling you today, just because that's who I am. But one thing is definitely that the amount of information that you can gain by asking an open-ended question, important differentiation, an open-ended question is so important in learning about an organization, figuring out what a client or an employee is going to give you more information than you can possibly know what to do with if you just take the time to listen. So a super important piece.
I like what you said about that one leader telling you, hey, I know you're working the 60, 70 hours per week right now, but what does that tell your team?
Yeah.
I do the same. I tell my teams, I say, listen, only because I'm working, I don't expect to reply to that email right away. I'm the kind of
Right.
person that I need it off my mind. So I did that email or whatnot, but I don't expect you to reply to that on a Saturday. So you can actually not even read it till Monday if you want to. Trust me, if I need to get a hold of you in an emergency situation, I'll get a hold of you. You don't have to worry about that email along the way, right?
Right.
I find with a lot of leaders, though, one of the common traits is they are impatient. Right. So
Mhm.
they are very impatient and they're very competitive along the way as well, meaning they take things personally. And because they're competitive, it just drives them. It's an overall drive within their being to have the need to win. And I think that those kind of leaders are the ones that actually create high achieving teams. And high achieving teams are, there's a theory, there's a high performing team and a high achieving team. High performing team, we got a good team here. There's some great players in it, some really cool wins through the year. High achieving team is hey, everybody knows their lane. There's clarity, right? And we just go out and win. And if you actually think about it, last 2 years, somebody like the Florida Panthers, that's a high achieving team. You can't say these three players are the absolute all-stars of the league. They're not about that. They're more about, hey, here's the player, stay in your lane and just work our system, right? And don't go rogue. Don't go rogue and work our system, right? Where the
Mhm.
Leafs, previous to this year, high performing team, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
some cool wins throughout the year, most points they've ever won the President's Trophy, some really cool vibes along the way. But at the end of the day, again, just lasted one extra playoff round, still didn't win the cup, right? So there is a key difference, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, well, no single piece is greater than the whole, right? And
Yes.
I think your point. I'm just going to probably reiterate what you're saying, but everybody needs to understand what their role is in the thing. And if you use the sports analogy, and I love using the sports analogies, right? If you're a defenseman, you don't need to score all the goals, whatever the case may be. So, but as the leader, it's my job to make sure you clearly understand what your job is. That doesn't mean you need to be super, super rigid, right?
Yeah.
Once in a while, if the opportunity presents itself, go for it and feel like you're empowered and you have the latitude to do that. And by the way, if you make a mistake, let's learn from that, right? No one's getting fired,
Yeah.
right? For trying to do the right thing.
Sure.
But okay, let's analyze it. Didn't work so well. Maybe so why didn't it work well? So let's recognize it. Let's not do that one again. But it's our job, leader's job, to say, here is exactly what the parameters are of your position, and here's how it fits in the overall puzzle, in the team, if you will, right? Not everyone's a running back or a quarterback, right? You need to have linemen, right? You need to have guys who are catch the ball. So as long as you set very clear expectations, you check in on those expectations, make sure people understand. And I find a really effective tool, Jason, is obviously the job is the job, but do you have the right person for that job, right? And we'll probably get into that because that's so critical to, like don't ask a plumber to be a painter. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a different thing. And engage the individual. Again, there's parameters in it, but talk about it with the person, right? How can you influence? Tell me how you can do this. How are you going to do this job? Or what's in you that can bring something more to the expectation of the role, right? So someone's engaged, right? If you're engaged as opposed to me just telling you, Jason, what to do, maybe
Yes.
not so.
I actually find that some of the one of the biggest things that leaders forget about is the follow-up, like you just said, right? So it's okay to provide clarity and, just say, hey, what lane do I need you to be in? But what's the follow-up? Because I find a lot of leaders will actually, you need to leave that low-hanging fruit and there isn't a specific, hey, I need this by then, or what else do you need from me to keep this process moving? And I think that's a key that a lot of leaders is specifically, high driving leaders that I've talked to. One of their biggest kind of blind spots is the follow-up along the way.
I write stuff down, Jason.
Yeah.
Typing 10 might be one of the best classes
Yeah.
of my high school.
Yeah.
I was, I'm not a dummy, but I can do this and I could be taking notes right now. And again, it's kind of a learned skill. I was doing it for a while, but at least I can type and I can type quickly. But regardless of how you do it, whether you record a conversation or whatever the case may be, I write stuff down and I say, who's responsible for it and when are we going to get it done? And you know what happens at the next meeting or the next conversation? I bring out that
Yep.
email and we say, hey, listen, Jason,
Yeah.
you were going to talk to Bob about whatever.
Exactly.
And how did that conversation go? Right? Because then all of a sudden you're accountable. So if you're saying stuff that you're going to do it, you're going to know on my team, I'm going to ask you how it went. That's accountability. I mean, again, sometimes people think of accountability as a bad word. I love it. To me, it's like, give me it. I'll be accountable to make it happen. But if you're going to culturally have an accountable organization, you have to do things that lead to being accountable.
Absolutely. So, leading to somebody being accountable, sometimes we have to make some decisions and we have to have some tough conversations along the way. Tough conversations or direct conversations are, tough to have sometimes. How do you protect trust when making unpopular decisions or having those tough conversations?
Well, I think the way you maintain trust is what you do before you have to get to that point. So it kind of feeds back into what we were saying. If I've been clear and transparent about what the role and what the goals are, right? The business objectives, whatever the case may be, your role in getting them. Here's how I'd like you to achieve those. And I'm checking in with you on a regular basis, right? Quarterly, certainly do a mid-year calibration, right? You should have performance goals for the year. And I'm checking in with you. There should be no surprises, right? So it's like, look, we've talked about it, right? We've reviewed it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm invested in you, Jason. Here's what I'm going to do to help you improve or be better or whatever the case may be. It's not just be better. It's, listen, why don't we talk on a weekly basis and we can do some role playing and you can run that sales pitch by somebody, or, hey, for that presentation, why don't we go over it a couple of times to make sure you're comfortable with it before you go on to the next thing. So if I'm invested in you, then I'm not just hanging you out, right? I'm not hanging you out and people aren't going to lose trust or faith or think that I'm blaming you because I've been there with you every step of the way, right? It takes time, but I've been there every step of the way. We were very clear on what we were trying to do and move on. And the most important, or something that I've observed over the years, is the other people that are in the work group know when maybe somebody isn't pulling their weight,
Yep.
and they know that something should be done about it. And when you make the decision, again, very often if somebody leaves the organization or whatever the case may be, they just recognize you did the right thing.
Yeah. It's amazing how, as a leader, you're always on stage and they're looking at your body language. They're looking if you rolled your eyes. They're looking who you're coaching, what your message is, how you're delivering that message. The other thing they notice, specifically the A players, if you're spending all your time coaching a C or a D player, they actually notice that and they say, hey, here I am. I'm driving results for you. I'm doing all the right things and I'm getting very little of your time. And what leaders will say, Pete, is they'll say, I don't have to worry about that person because they're performing and whatnot. But you do have to worry about that person.
Of
Even,
course.
even if you're the absolute star of a team, somebody like Connor McDavid, you still see the coach talk to him when he comes to the bench.
Of course.
They might be saying, that was the best shift I've ever seen in my life. Can you do another one of those? But there's still kind of some kind of coaching that needs to happen so that player knows, hey, I'm being recognized, I'm being communicated to, and you're actually seeing what I'm doing for this team.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, right? Everybody, a sports analogy, it's a good one. But you hear them say that everyone likes to be coached, right?
Yep.
Everyone wants to do better, be better.
Yep.
And it's the rare individuals like, oh, listen, I don't need that, honestly. So, you need to pick your spots and make sure that you have something of substance, material to say and have an example, right? But absolutely, everybody in the organization needs support because, especially those A players, you want a whole team of them.
100%.
So if you can really get the A players flying and then work with those people who are maybe struggling and get them up there, at the end of the day, feedback is a gift and most people will embrace it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely. It might sting a little bit sometimes,
Oh yeah, sure.
but after you kind of get over and say, okay, you know what, that person had a point. It just gets us to a better place, specifically if it's given in a respectable, trusted way on just trying to get somebody to do a better job than they're doing, right? And get,
Not in public, in private,
yeah,
specific.
100%. Pete, you've been in many leadership roles. When you first take on a new role with a new company or you've transferred from one function to another function, what do you like to assess first? The numbers, the talent, or the overall culture? And culture can be something like you could have a different culture in one function than there is in the rest of the company, just based on maybe a previous leader or whatever. So
Yep.
I just
Yep.
kind of want to see where your mind works. Do you look at the numbers, the talent, the culture? How do you go in and dissect that?
I just want to make a point. When you do org health surveys and things like that in organizations, you really do see that, right?
Yeah.
This one department is like, wow, everything is great over here,
Yeah.
and this department is, oh, not so great. But when you look at the whole, it's like, hey, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And the difference of that good one versus the bad one, generally speaking, is the leader. So,
yeah.
To your point, the culture is so very important. And, you are a driver of the culture. And if you can get your leaders on side with that, right, or your direct reports on side with that, is going to build a culture. But I find the numbers are easy to see, right? And it's quick. You can dissect that. Like if I start a new job or I get promoted, I'm in the same company, but I get promoted to a new job. Having a quick look at the data is informative, right? Like, so you always want to be pulling as much information as you can to inform what you're going to do next. So I like to quickly have a glance. Are we winning, or like we're good top line, but our profitability is bad, whatever the case may be. Understand it, because that's going to maybe inform you when you go. Then my next thing is to spend time with the people, right? That first 100 days. And again, do a lot of listening, do the listening tours, I like to call it, where you just, talk to me about what you do. Let's go out and whatever, meet your customers, whatever the particular role is, or let's go on the shop floor. Because I think when you start to understand from those individuals, then you start to get, by asking a lot of open-ended questions, you get some insight into what's happening in the culture, right? Is it a toxic environment? Oh yeah, like we never get anything, or whatever the case may be. So you kind of figure it out that way. And then, by the end of that 100 days, if you will, 3 months, then you should have a pretty good idea of culturally maybe what's not working.
Yeah.
And you can make some decisions. I mean, again, it's the biggest thing, because again, when you get that great culture, you're going to drive great results. But that you can't turn that on and off.
Yeah, it's got to be built over time.
Got to be built over time.
Absolutely. A few more questions, then I'm going to let you get back on with your day, because you've been really generous with your time today. What do you think is the biggest leadership mistake executives make when they're trying to scale?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's, obviously scaling for growth, and there's also, slowing down in bad times. COVID would be a great example of that. I would suggest the problem when things are going well is you tend to move too fast, right? Because you're doing well for a reason, right? Because you got people who know what they're doing,
Yep.
right? And it's a well-honed team, and everyone knows each other, and things are going well. So you want to open another branch, or you want to grow like crazy. Well, now you're bringing in new people, and that changes the culture. So you really got to be judicious and patient. Grow, but don't try to explode.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Be planful. Make sure you got some good, steps along the way. You're not going to go from 1 to 10. Let's go 1 to 2. Right. And do that. On the other side of things, because, on a downturn, sometimes people go too slow. But when things are going bad and you're reading the tea leaves and things aren't so great, you got to be bold, and because ultimately you're going to hold on to the best. So you're probably going to get through it, but you can't be too slow in making some difficult decisions in times of challenge.
Yeah. Great answer. And I would sum that answer up with one word. I'd just say balance. Right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Balance would be important for what you're saying. And when we go too fast and then we slow down, that's what usually our eyes open up, because one of my favorite sayings is sales hides all sins, right?
Of course.
And
Of course
when things are going well, guess what? We're the most amazing organization in the world. And then something happens, COVID, like you said, or sales slow down. And then, whoa, we're starting to see a little bit of the things we never really were paying attention to because we were moving too fast. So what a great answer. If I had to ask you, when somebody leaves your organization or a function that you led, what do you hope that they say about the culture that you built while they were there?
Yeah, I'd like to think that they would say it's genuine, it's honest, and you can speak your mind, but the leadership was genuine. I'd like to hear that it's collaborative, right? That they had skin in the game, they had a voice that was heard, that it was a safe environment. They're all good opinions, right? Some we may not use, but I think I'm paid to have an opinion. I want opinions from my employees. So genuine, collaborative, but also results oriented. Like we're not getting paid just to kind of hang around and have a good time, right? There's work to be done. That there was expectations, but we work together to achieve those expectations. And then finally, I think from my perspective is that I led with integrity, or there was integrity in our organization. I did what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
If I'm going to coach, I'm going to coach, right? If we're going to share our, I'm just honest and do what I say I'm going to do. And then that's, I'll tell you what, again, no companies, but I left this place a little while ago and I was working with some unionized guys. And every year I get the call, Pete, are you playing in the football pool? Because like, and they're saying, hey, you got to come back, man. Like, you got to come back. Okay. But that tells me something, right?
Yeah.
And that was blue collar guys working in warehouses, but they saw me walking around picking up the garbage,
Yep.
right? Pitching in when it was important. And that's all I need to know.
I love it. I love that answer, Pete. I'm going to leave you with this question and then we're going to let you get back with your day.
Sure.
If you were talking to a young leader today, what is the one piece of advice you give that young leader starting out his career that would probably help him and would resonate with them, when they're older leaders like myself and you, and we're in our 50s and you all of a sudden you're saying, you know what, like I'm glad I told that person that, or they're glad that you told them that.
I'd go back to the listening, ask a lot of questions and listen, because you'll learn a lot from that. I would also say you're not going to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
And maybe you are the smartest guy in the room, but don't be the smartest guy in the room, right? There's so much that you can learn from others that's going to help you be better at what you do as you go ahead in your career. So listen, ask open-ended questions, and value the opinions of your people.
Yes. Listen, balance, clarity. You've talked on all of them today, Pete. So with that, I want to thank you. So one, thanks for your leadership style. I've experienced it personally. If you love that session and that conversation as much as I did, would love to have you join our People Playbook community in the link below.